Here we are again on the Life to the Fullest podcast. I'm your host, Dan Jason. This is the EF3 Life platform, journeying on through life and just celebrating the goodness and all the things that are coming our way. Today on the podcast, I want to talk about finances and building winning systems. Certainly, money is on people's minds. It's a new year, it's a new you. Hopefully, you're growing. The first quarter has been going well. If you have a business, if you're someone who is starting things out, doing a side hustle, if you're getting into the world of investing, or you're looking into real estate, so many different facets and ways that we can certainly magnify our own wealth building potential, as well as strategically implement great systems into our life that will help us not only achieve our goals but live the life that we truly desire and that we deserve. Over the course of my time on this planet, certainly money has been something that we all need. And it's one thing that I definitely did struggle with on a daily basis earlier on in my life. I remember some key moments where I really learned a lot, and I'm going to share some of those stories with you today. But we are going to take a really close look at building a game winning system and what I believe can be utilized in order to fill certain buckets of your portfolio to help you to build the future that you deserve. Whether you're somebody that has a wealth of knowledge in this frame of mind, or you're someone who's just starting out and you need to learn a lot, I hope that you'll be able to take some key elements away, because the matter of it is, if you implement it, if you take the knowledge and you apply it, great things can certainly happen. So when I look back and I think and reflect upon life and what money has allowed me to do and the blessings other people have provided because of their generosity and ways that money has impacted the lives of others through the missionary work that I do throughout the world, it really calls to mind the reason behind it, right? And certainly everybody needs this resource. It's a resource to help us to live life, to be able to, interact, to be able to do the daily functionalities on a week-to-week basis. But also, it's a great resource to help us to improve, to, like I said before, impact lives of other people and to make a difference in the world, to leave your mark. And a couple different frameworks and shifts of mindset have had to happen over the course of the years in order for me to come to this place of not only being able to really share with other people systems that I built and I teach to others, but also understanding the concepts and why we do what we do. Because the matter of fact is that everybody is going to go to work. They're going to work probably 40 or so years of their life or more, and then eventually they'll live hopefully 20 or 30 years and enjoy their retirement if they're lucky. And there's so much more to life, obviously, than just what we're doing on a daily basis in order to earn this resource that we need. One of the things that I hope that you take away today is understanding where you're at right now with your relationship with money, where you want to be and how you can grow into that, and then how that new framework or mindset can allow you to build game winning systems. So the first is where we're at when it comes to our relationship with money. Now, when I was a young boy, I remember being like 4 or 5 years old, going to the store with my parents, and I had some money that they had given to me for allowance, some chores and things I did around the house. And I might have some birthday money and stuff of that nature. And I remember going into Walmart, and as a kid going in there, you see all the toys, you see all these things that you could ask your parents to buy. And my parents really set a really important precedent at that time, being a little kid and going to different aisles and seeing the different toys. And I remember having $2, and I had this thought that I wanted to get this Matchbox car, and I didn't know which one I wanted to get. But as I'm going down the aisle and I'm looking at all these shiny new cars, and there was one that really, really stood out. It was a Hot Wheels red Corvette Matchbox car. And I'm looking at this thing, and this thing was really beautiful. I was like, wow, that's the one I want. I point it to pick it up, and I go to the register, and to no avail, they scan it, and unfortunately, New York State sales tax. So I had $2, but I didn't have the money for the tax. Now, I had to put that car back on the shelf. It was a learning lesson that day. Some would say that's crazy and it's so harsh. to make a little kid have to put that back on the shelf. But it taught me really the value of money. Okay, it taught me that there are certain things that are attributed to money, like tax, that I had to account for. Now, did I really understand the concept of it? Just being a kindergartner? No, absolutely not. But it set and laid a firm foundation, meaning that if I didn't have enough, I couldn't purchase it. And I fast forward in my life and I look at not only life now, but even 15 years ago, as my working career started to begin and all this kind of stuff. And after college, and you're looking at the cost of things, you're looking at how things are valued. And most young people in this day and age, what do? They get the credit card out and they swipe it. They swipe to no avail, and they swipe all the way through tons and tons of debt. And what happened on that day when I had to put that red Corvette back and then go back the following week when I earned another dollar, from my allowance and had enough, and then ended up getting the change, was that it switched my framework. And that groundwork that my parents laid out for me started to build a foundation, that in order to pay for something, in order to have it, you had to bring enough to the table. And when I look at life now, all the way back all those years ago, it isn't even just about the cost. I think a lot of us can switch that framework. And I went from a scarcity mentality, somebody that never thought that they had enough, or how would I ever have enough, or, what is everything, and looking at the price tag to a fine tooth comb, to a abundant mindset and understanding the worth of things. And we're going to get into that later on in the episode, because there's a really important distinction between the two, and it really can help us to build a game-winning system. So by doing that, we are able to really recognize, okay, what is our relationship? So I want you to take a few moments this week to reflect and look back if there was anything that might have been traumatic, anything that might have been really amazing in terms of impactful or helpful on your journey in your past as a child or as a young person, of why maybe you are the way you are when it comes to money. I would say my parents did an amazing job of saving, and they saved, and they saved for our colleges, they saved for a lot of different things like family vacations, they saved for things that they wanted to buy. And at least from my own perception, it didn't seem like they were spending beyond their means, or that they were purchasing things that they couldn't necessarily afford. And that also laid a firm foundation. I'm not saying one thing is better than the other, or if you had a different childhood, that isn't the right way of doing it in parenting. There's all different philosophies and ways and approaches, but I'm just encouraging you to look back, because a lot of how you perceive things, the way that you approach financial realm, probably has to do with the household that you grew up in, right? If someone grew up in a household that was really stressed out about money, and it was not that much to go around, certainly that scarcity mentality might be there. Or if it was revealed to the kids that way, that we didn't have that much, and that it might not be possible. Another example that I had earlier on was when we went on one of our first bigger family vacations down to Washington, D.C. And I remember being a little boy and loving basketball and sports. And we're walking past, because we had gone to a different museum and stuff, and doing things that were very, very affordable for a family of four at the time. Parents, just teachers, and don't make a ton, and all this, but very grateful to have those experiences. And so we go past the Washington Wizards Stadium, and there's going to be a game going on. I see lots of kids in line, families, they're wearing the jerseys, and it's during one of our school breaks, and they're going to be playing the Boston Celtics. And I had never been to an NBA game. Certainly, I watched a lot of basketball on TV. I love basketball. It's my favorite sport, still is. And, you're seeing everybody excited to go in. You're seeing the video on the big board outside of the stadium. And I asked my dad, hey, Dad, could we go inside? Could we watch the game? And he says something to the effect of, son, I would love to, but we just don't have enough. It's too expensive for us to do that. But we'll still have a good time. We'll make something special happen, and we'll continue to have fun on this vacation. And I remember being disappointed. I saw the look in my brother's eyes, and it was there's times in life where kids are going to be disappointed, right? We can't have it all. But then there was some kind of act of charity that I'll never forget. Along came this man who he probably was maybe 8 to 10 feet away. He had passed us and he had heard the conversation my dad and I had had. And so he stopped us in our tracks and he said, to my dad, "Excuse me, sir, do you mind if I interrupt for a second? And I heard you over talking with your son, and I know that he really seems like he likes basketball. There's a game going on, and I heard you guys say, that you want us to go to the game." And he says, "I have 4 tickets." I was like, "Wow." Then I'm starting to think in my head, okay, well, my dad's like, "Yeah, thank you so much, but we can't afford them. We're not able to pay for it, and but I hope that you're able to sell them to someone else." And the guy, he actually says, "No, actually, I want to give them to you." And I was like, "Whoa, he's going to give them to us?" And my dad just didn't really know what to say or how to receive this. And he's like, "Yeah, I want to give them to you. I just asked that I can walk you to the people collecting the tickets, and then I see that you go into the game, you have a great time." And I was like, "Dad, we can actually go." My dad's like, "No, that's okay. We can't really take those tickets for nothing." The guy said, "No, really, I really want your sons to have a great experience. I'm a season ticket holder." And long story short, we go into the game, and I remember going into the stadium just seeing almost 20,000 people in the arena, and they're pretty good seats, like the mezzanine level. And I'm watching my first NBA game, and I have a smile on my face ear to ear. And I remember writing about it in my journal when I came back to school from that February break trip, and it was just fantastic. But why do I mention that now? Because of acts of charity. See, like when you're able to do great things with your finances, brighten someone else's day, to make an impact, you do so because you have and you're able to give, right? You're able to pour. We can't pour from an empty cup. Certainly this gentleman had done well for himself. He, was able to give from a cheerful and joyous heart. One of the beautiful aspects of finances is being able to give. And sometimes we're the receiver of those gifts. And other times in our life, we're going to be the giver. We're going to be the one that actually bestows that benevolence on other people. And it's going to be something that really reshapes our whole framework when it comes to finances, because when you look at money, right, it's a resource and there's so much good that we can do in the world. And I mentioned previously when it comes to my platform, EF3 Life, Education, Faith, Fitness, Finance, one of the big aspects of it is mission and giving back and doing acts of charity and going around the world and creating aspects of joy, inviting other people into it, and being able to support kids in third world countries and people that don't have. And the love that's being able to be shared in those experiences truly motivates me. And that gets me back to your why. Why is it that you're working so hard on a day-to-day basis? Or maybe why is it that you're hesitant to do so? Why is it that you want to achieve success in your business or in your workplace, to continue to climb the ranks, to earn a higher potential? Why is it that maybe you're tuning into this podcast today to learn more about finances, to learn more about ways that you can invest and grow and build the game winning system for your life? There are reasons there. And if your why is big enough, if you can identify that why, and that why can change over the course of time, and there might be multiple layers to that why, it's going to be the real catalyst to help you to establish that firm foundation when it comes to what you are doing to build in your life when it comes to your finances, in order to be disciplined, to make sure that you're not going off on a different track, or that you're getting distracted by the things that might not be in the recipe for you to be successful. So please take some time this week also to really recognize your why and the mission behind it, right? When you look at life, if money was not an object at all, if there was enough to go around for you and everybody, like, what would you do on a regular basis? What would be different about your life? That in itself is your value index. When we look at value index, it's what are the things that we truly put the most purpose and we have the most passion for, and it makes us come alive. That's the value index. So the reason behind it, the why, the purpose, equates to the value index. And that in itself is going to be the proponent to help you to keep going. Then we talk about, the next frame of work or the next system building is in that you must, in order to have a game winning plan, start somewhere. And a lot of us, when we hear the word budget, it's like handcuffs are being put on and we're feeling really anxious or afraid or worried, or I don't want to do that, right? There's big resistance and pushback. But for me, what I've decided to over the course of the years is to rework my framework of my mindset and how I approach it. And the way that I'm teaching it to other people is, if that B word is too hard for you, too harsh, and has a pejorative nature to it, right? A negative connotation, it's okay. Instead of using that word, use the word cash flow. Now, there's two different aspects to this point here. Number one is the fact that the language itself actually matters. When you speak things, you start to resonate with it. You start to hear it more, even in your own subconscious. And also, you start to work on that and believe it. Like if you speak it, you're going to start believing it and start living it out. Now, if you're somebody who's thinking, okay, the budget is the handcuffs on, I can't have fun, it's the no fun zone, things in my life are not going to go according to plan, I have to lock down, and everybody else is going to be doing great things around me, and I just got to stay to this script completely. And you're looking at it from a negative mindset. You're going to have resistance to it right off the rip. But instead, if you're looking from a cash flow perspective, well, what are two aspects there? Cash and flow. Cash meaning wealth, meaning abundance, meaning more. Having flow in your life, going with it, right? It's something that is supposed to not necessarily always be easy, but it shouldn't be causing you lots of pain and distress. And having that frame of mind and looking at it from that lens is going to help you, because you'll start looking at, okay, what is coming into my life? What is flowing in terms of what am I making, right? Your greatest wealth building tool obviously is your income, and you can have multiple streams of income. We're going to get into that and how to do that. But if you're working a 9-to-5 job right now, that is your wealth building tool. That is what you have to offer to yourself. And from that, where's the money going? And the money, you decide where's it going to flow to. Okay. And looking at it in a different way, instead of the budget looks at it from, oh, what does this cost? What does this cost? What does this cost? Just looking at price tags all the time, versus cash flow is looking at, how much is this worth? Do I value this? Is this something I prioritize? And by doing so, then you start saying, I'm not just playing defense, because the budget is really strictly framework for defense. And there is a time and a place for that, absolutely. But it's looking at it in this new manner, so that way you can also play offense, so you can grow it, so you can make more of it, so you can take what you have and you can expound upon it. Because if we're working 9 to 5 in this rat race of life and just doing that every single day, day in and day out, year after year, at the end, we're just going to work forever, right? So in order for that to not be the case, in order for us to have more freedom, more abilities, more capabilities of doing whatever it is that our heart's desires is, whatever our passions in life are, whatever we have for our why, what our value index is in line with, then it's important for us to work through cash flow. And what comes in, then we can evaluate and we can see where it's going to go systematically and what's left over. Okay, the amount that we have at the end of the month or the end of that 2-week period, we get to decide what we're going to do with it. And this is where the real system building begins. Now, many of you out there have really talked about goals in the past, maybe even had a financial advisor. You read books about it, and it's very, very, very goal heavy. Earlier on in my life, I was very goal heavy as well. Goals are a good thing. They're not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. However, if you only have goals, but you're not building a way to achieve those goals, it's just a wish, it's just a dream, and it's actually not going to take place. And that's why so many people at the end of the year, they had these New Year's resolutions, but they didn't do the steps to take in order for them to happen, right? You have to make it happen. And for finances, it's no different. But the fact is, it becomes harder over the course of time because you get used to a certain way of life. And if you're setting a precedent for your life in a certain manner and you're living a certain way, it becomes harder to take a step back, to sacrifice, to make adjustments in order for you to actually achieve or reach your goals. So if you're building a system along the way, goals are part of that system, and the goals can take place and will take place. You'll achieve them and you will actually supersede them because you have a procedure. And if you start looking at your life and building it similar to the way a great and sound business is built, which really operates out of cash flow, which operates out of understanding all of the aspects, has a value index, has a mission statement, has a purpose, right? Has a vision for their company, then your life will flow in the same manner and success will come to you. But it takes work, right? Not only just work going day in and day out, but what do we do with what we earn? Because more than what you earn, certainly if you're earning more, you have a greater chance to achieve it or get to where you want to be quicker, right? In a more efficient manner if you utilize it in an appropriate manner and you make sound decisions. But even more so than what we make or how much we make, it's more of what we do with the resource itself. Because there's a plethora of examples out there of people. I mean, there's a great book, Everyday Millionaire, and it talks about the common person becoming a millionaire in their life. And if you look at even the careers in the United States that are attributed to having the most millionaires, one of them actually, believe it or not, is a teacher because of maybe back in the day, the retirement. And it shifted since then. There isn't as good of benefits for our educators. And whether you think that that's a good thing or not, the point I'm trying to make is that, pension plans are kind of going on the wayside a little bit. So when you build your system, what are the foundations? What are the building blocks? The first is understanding cash flow and understanding the actual amount that you have on a daily basis, on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis to work out of, right? That's your operating budget. And then after you understand what the bills are and these types of structural fixed costs, then you take that pool of money that's left over, and hopefully you're not operating from a deficit, right? Because it's not going to work well for you. And that's how people get into debt. But if you have a little bit of a surplus, even a little bit, and even if you're somebody that has a surplus, but you do have debt, that's not necessarily a bad place to be. It's just a matter of utilizing it to chip away at it. When it comes to debt, there's a lot of great ideologies, a lot of great philosophies. Many people are a proponent of Dave Ramsey's snowball, that snowball. There's a number of ways to look at it. What I like looking at too is, how much do you owe? What's the percentage of interest that you're paying out? And what are some ways that you could start, taking care of that and chopping it down? And one of those aspects for many people out there is credit cards. Credit card debt is some of the worst consumer debt because of the high interest rate, 24, 28 or higher percent. And yes, there are oftentimes cards that don't have an interest rate for the first year, 6 months, or 2 years. All the terms are different. However, once that is not being fully paid off, you're just racking up a crazy amount of interest and you're going to have to pay it off. And it's just going to build, 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 and snowballing in the wrong direction. We want to leverage interest in the right direction. So for many of us out there, it's the first thing is getting back to ground zero. It's getting to a level and even playing field, which is paying off your debt. And when the debt is paid off, or the majority of it outside of your mortgage of a primary home, then what takes place is you're able to really focus in and start building a game-winning system. It's part of the system, it's part of the foundation, trying our best to stay out of bad debt. Later on, I'll certainly talk about ways to leverage good debt, okay? Because there's an aspect to it as well. But the next step in this system is looking at the different buckets when it comes to how am I earning, what am I doing with the money that I have from my cash flow, what are ways to turn it into more over the course of time. Is it aligned to my value index? So one of those being operating out of your today money, today or short term investing money, and that has to be a guaranteed rate of return. And anything like a high yield savings account, For people that really understand, this is something, a vehicle that will help you to earn money and operate out of it, and you can withdraw from it. You can, supply more to it. You can take and you could give to it, but it's something that's going to be like your 1 or 2 or at most 3 years that you're operating out of right here. It can also be your nest egg in terms of having an emergency fund. And a lot of people don't recognize that, but it's putting money aside 3 to 6 months. I'm a proponent of, if you really do have job stability and your spouse is working as well, or depending upon your financial situation, yes, definitely at least have those 3 months and at most 6 months of living wages. So that way, if the worst case scenario happens, you're able to live and be able to continue on with your life. You don't have to sell your house or make any crazy decisions while you're looking for that next job. After that emergency fund is built up, the next part of that bucket, that first initial bucket, is helping you to pay your bills, helping you to live, like I said, in this 1 to 3 year period at most. I like to look at it as like the 1 to 2 year plan, and it's life expenses, right? It's the day in and day out. It could be the vacations you're going to go on. It's the bills you have to pay, and it's earning some money when it's sitting there. High yield savings account, maybe it's 3.75%, maybe it's 4%, right? The feds, they raise the rates, they lower the rates, so it's going to fluctuate, but it's not losing money. That is great. Then once that's established with that emergency fund and you're debt free, then you have your next bucket, which is like the midterm bucket. And the third bucket, which is the retirement fund. Now, your midterm bucket can sometimes be connected to your third bucket, your retirement fund. With the midterm bucket, we're talking about a 7 to 12 year period, right? We're forecasting 7 to 12 years, and we're trying to take a look at what are ways for us to earn money, to invest it, to grow it, and we can have access to it. It has liquidity, but it's also going to earn a rate of return. And we want a rate of return anywhere from typically that 6 to 9% range would be great. If we get more than that, fantastic. But in that sweet spot, okay. And there's some great investment products. There's some great tools and resources, vehicles that you can invest in that'll help you to do so. Some of which actually have a 0% floor, and I'll get to that in a moment. But with that midterm bucket, it's really looking and forecasting out, okay, in the next decade or so. What are some areas of my life that I want to improve upon? What are some areas that I think I'm going to enter into? Forecasting, shadowing, looking at my value index and the vision I have for my life. Do I want to start a business? Am I going to hopefully upgrade my home? Is my family going to grow? There are passion projects I want to do. What would I do if I had, an extra amount of money to be able to leverage and enter into other positions in? Okay, this is money down the road. It's money that's liquid, so you have at least some liquidity. Okay, it's not locked up and you can't touch it, but it's also growing over the course of time. And then that third bucket, right, is the retirement fund. Starting that off early is important because, as we know, compound interest, one of the greatest wonders of the world. Albert Einstein said that. He was so true. What does it need? It needs money to be fueled, just like a fire needs wood, and it also needs time. And the time is the thing that helps to accumulate, that helps it to compound. And little by little, it grows. And by putting more in over the course of time, with 30, 40 years, maybe you're starting a little bit later, that's okay. Even 10 years, 15 or 20, it's going to grow. The more time it has, the more that you put into it, it's going to grow. Now, what should you be investing into in there? I'll get to that in a moment. The point of this money, though, is you're not touching it. Okay, look at this as it's a way, and you need it. You'll need it for later on in your life. You'll need it so you don't have to work the rest of your life, but you're not going to actually utilize any of it until you're about 60 years old, probably 59 and a half, where you could withdraw from your 401k, your 403b, your Roth IRA, your IRA without penalty, right? So these are really important pieces for people out there to have these different buckets. And that third bucket is planning as if you're going to live forever. And then you're going to then eventually turn that legacy over to your kids or your nieces and nephews or to some kind of charity, whoever you wanted to leave a pool of money with at the end of your life that you didn't spend in order to make an impact, to leave a legacy. That's again money you're not touching for a long time. So based on your philosophy, based on the way that you look at it, it wouldn't be wise, in my opinion, to put all of your eggs in that basket. Now you need to put some of them in there because it won't grow without anything. And you certainly will have to work the rest of your life if you don't, do due diligence for yourself and for others, because you look at, okay, if you have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, whatever it is, 500,000, even 200,000, whatever was there. Okay. And you have to decide based on your type of living situation, based on the quality of life you want to have, based on the retirement that you're trying to live, based on what you're trying to do in retirement. All of these are different factors. And we're not even looking at the tax strategies yet. That's a little bit too in depth right now. We're just talking about the game winning system. Game winning system is like triangle offense in basketball. We play triangle offense in basketball. It's 3 points to a triangle. Point number one, what are you operating out of for the short term? The 1 to 2, at most 3 years, right? It's completely liquid. It's going to grow a little bit. There's no chance of you losing money on it. Point number two of the triangle, midterm. Think decade. Maybe a little bit shorter for some, maybe a little bit longer for others. 10 years, 7 to 12, 10 is that average. How is it earning? How is it being able to grow? It has some liquidity and it's not locked up forever, but it's helping me down the road to be able to achieve my goals later on. And then the third portion of the triangle, all the way to the right-hand side, value index, legacy, thinking long-term play, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. How's that growing? How is that being able to afford me a lifestyle that I want to have, being able to be generous, being able to be charitable, whatever my value index is aligned to, I have a wealth of resources there in order to not have to work the rest of my life, but to enjoy life at that moment on the back nine. These are the three buckets. Now, as you're going along, you can implement some other buckets. Within that middle bucket, there's some great options, and I mentioned I would share those. One of those being UIL, Universal Indexed Life. What does that mean? Well, people run for the hills when you start talking about life insurance. We start talking about things that are scary, right? Sometimes off-putting. Why? Because for a number of reasons, we don't want to think about mortality. We don't want to think about death. We have to have protections in place, though. We talked about that first bucket being money that's completely liquid. It's going to grow. Okay, it's not going to grow exponentially if it's at 3 or 4%. It's just giving us a little bit of icing on the cake. We're operating out of it, living our life. Middle bucket, though, we want it to grow. We also want it to protect our assets. So one of the benefits of a universal index life fund is it protects your assets. Why? It's attributed to a life insurance policy. You can have $1 million policy, $1.5 million, depending upon your income. So you're fully not only funded, but you're also very well kept. Your family's in good order, just in case the worst case scenario happens. Not only that, it grows cash value over the course of time, completely tax-free. A lot of people don't realize this. Why isn't everybody doing it? Well, not that many people probably at the moment have a surplus or as much needed to be able to do this. But when you get to the point where you're really operating and trying to build that middle ground bucket, and you do have even $250, $300, $400 a month, you can put it into this investment vehicle that will grow for you, very similar to a retirement plan does. But the difference is your retirement plan, you can't utilize any of that money until you're 59 and a half. With this middle bucket, the UIL, you're able to withdraw money very early on. Okay. So within a few years of starting out this plan and it's growing, you're able to access the money and you're able to utilize it. It has cash liquidity. Why is that important? You decide, oh, this great opportunity comes up, or I have something that I wanted to start. I wanted to upgrade a house, whatever the case is, a project. You have money that's there. It's growing. The beauty of it is 0% floor, meaning it can't lose. Okay. You're only going to gain money over the course of time. It's attributed to the S&P 500. So very similar to a lot of people's retirements account, right? It's going to be attributed to the S&P, top 500 companies. And over the last 130 or so years, it's going up, right? It's going up usually around 10% over that average, okay? Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes less, sometimes far less. But the beauty of it here is even if the stock market were to absolutely shoot the bed and do terrible, right? And just tank like it did during the pandemic, and it loses 38% or 40%, you're not going to lose because it has a stop level there. How does that work? Well, you have to sacrifice some of the upward growth potential, meaning that in the regular stock market, S&P 500, a retirement account or a brokerage account, which is just purely owning stocks, you could maybe make gains of 20, 30% in a year. Oftentimes it's less than that, but it has that opportunity, whatever the market does. In here, the upward trajectory at the moment in New York State, 8.5%. So, with that being said, it's really important for us to recognize there are ways in the middle bucket to protect our assets holistically, also to be able to grow them tax free. So that money comes out, you can take as much out as you want, completely tax free. And it's also giving you a insurance benefit of a living benefit, meaning if you were to get terminally ill or something terrible were to happen, it's going to protect you. So it's a protection base and growth at the same time. There's also other middle buckets, one of them being a brokerage fund or brokerage account. The way that that works is you're investing in stocks. It could be single stocks. It could be an exchange traded fund, an ETF, could be mutual funds, which is a variety or a basket in a certain market segment, meaning technology or consumer goods or industrials. There's all different types of investments. There's all different types of baskets. It's like going into the shopping aisle and going in the cereal aisle. You can get a bunch of different cereals and put it in your cart. Or you could go into, the snack aisle and you could get all different chips and stuff. And we're trying to live a healthy and fit life here, but I'm just trying to make a point. So you can have a variety of these things in your brokerage account, or you could buy one single item. Like you can go and you could buy apples and you can put them in your cart. Well, you could buy Apple stock and have that as part of your portfolio. And as Apple grows or as it gets, better over the course of time, as the company improves, as new investors come into the strategy, what happens is it pays you out if you were to sell it. Now, here's a very important thing to understand. Whether it's your investment in your long-term retirement account, your investment in a brokerage account in the middle ground, UIL, and until you are selling, the brokerage stocks, until you're selling the retirement stuff, which you're not going to do most likely until you were to retire. You might adjust the mix or what it's invested in. You're not making anything, okay? On paper, based on the stock market, you might see a value in your account, the balance, what it is, okay? A certain number. However, until you press sell, there's nothing that's actually going to be true in your physical bank account. With some of these other strategies, you have to also look at the terms, because long term is one thing in terms of a tax situation and short term is another. Long term capital gains tax, anything that's over 1 year's time, when you sell it off, you're going to be charged that tax amount. It's a lesser amount than short term. So if you were to make gains in a less than 12-month period, you're going to pay short term capital gains tax. It's based on how much money you make, your income level, your tax rate, and it's factored in. And a lot of times people are paying more than double what they would of long term. It's okay to pay taxes on your money. You have to be cognizant of it. I'm not going to get into all of that or go down that rabbit hole right now, but I just wanted to mention it briefly to you. When we look, though, at those three buckets, the triangle offense, because remember, budget is often playing defense. Cash flow is about what do we do to play offense? What are we doing with the ball in our hand, the excess, the surplus, and how's it growing for us? The middle bucket is going to help you to grow. And if you're growing at a rate of 6, 7 to 10%, it's a beautiful thing. Why? Because regardless of strategy that it's in, if that's the average rate of return, we can factor in how long it'll take for our money to double. So the beautiful thing about investing is, whether it's long-term, mid-term, or short-term, based on the interest rate of return that you are getting back, that will actually tell you how long it'll take for your money to double. So if that rate stayed the same and you were to divide it into 72, that is how long it'll take for money to double. So if we had a 10% rate of return, we divide that into 72, it's going to take us 7.2 years for our money to double. Meaning, if someone has $20,000 in their account, right, it's diversified into different companies, it's invested in different ETFs or mutual funds or different indexes. And these are just words to explain there's different avenues or there's different places your money could go, but it's in the market, right? It's in the market, getting 10% return. It's going to take you 7.2 years for money to double. So right now it's 2025. In 2032, around March, on average, 7.2 years, maybe zoom up to May, right? It's going to be around that period of time in 2032, you would have $40,000. Now, that's if you didn't add another dollar to it. If you're contributing all along, you're not only getting the growth on the money that's already there, you're getting the growth on the new money as well. And that's where it really can accelerate. So part of your game winning system isn't just these three buckets, it's understanding it's based on percentages. Because it would do a disservice for me to say, hey, everybody out there, you should be investing $300 a month into your middle bucket. You should be investing $400 a month into your retirement account or $500. It's different for everybody's situation because it's based on percentages. Why? Because if someone is making a lot less, maybe they don't have as much cash flow in order to fill each of these buckets today. But a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, as their income increases, they can increase the total amount, but it still can be based on the fixed percentage that they're putting into that, right? So when you look at your operating income of your household, the hope is that all of your bills, where you're living, your car, all of your expenses, and we're talking about things that are needs, not necessarily wants. And sometimes people get those things mixed up. This is for the systems building. You can decide what's a need for you versus a want, and I'm not going to argue about it on you. But what I'm saying is if you have 70% is operating out of that, or even 80% at most, the other 20% should be a split between the middle bucket and the long-term bucket. And if you're able to do that, well, over the course of time, if you're able to, from the get-go, invest 20%, or some of us, if we're operating out of a 70% total bucket, we have 15 and 15, even better, then it's going to grow faster. Why? Because when you get a raise, when you take on a side hustle, when you start this business, this other venture, it's going to compound with the growth because of what you're inputting. The output is only going to be contributed by the input. So you are the greatest wealth building tool because you're the one who's deciding what you're putting in. Now, what you invest into, as we just mentioned, does matter. The rate of return matters. So if one thing's getting you 6%, but something else that's better and it's shown an improving track record can get you 10, well, maybe you decide to go into that strategy. Right? You got to give it a course of time. You have to look at the track record. There's a lot of different factors. And that's why having a really great financial advisor, a life coach, a financial coach to help you to make these decisions, to show you what all of your different options are, really does matter. It makes a magnanimous difference. And I had many of them over the course of the years. I even still have a couple that I lean into for advice today. And I'm giving advice to lots of different people because all these concepts are helpful to understand. All the things I'm laying out to you, right? You can read about it. You can do your own research. But what takes place is you have to look at your own situation. A lot of people have let's say, a blockade there. It becomes a hindering block. It becomes difficult for them because they're not sure where to start. So I'm always open to helping people on a one-on-one basis. I would say within 2 hours of time, we can really formalize a system that would work for you and your family. And through that consultation, you'll be able to get a blueprint for your life. Feel really good about it, be able to build momentum. We'll do systematic check-ins and make sure that you stay on the course that's aligned with your value index, but also that's going to help you to achieve your goals because that's part of the game-winning system, and get there in a time manner that you feel not only is appropriate, but you feel proud about. As life happens, we adjust it. Surplus comes in, we can include more. The lump sum that's going into your small bucket in terms of your short-term range, I should say, your midterm and your long-term, they can be funded a little bit more aggressively, right? And then as you continue to earn more, you pile in the money and it starts to grow even more. Now, one of the biggest and most advantageous parts of investing, I believe, is real estate. Getting into real estate. Why? Well, when you look at people that do some of the best, that do the most amount in terms of philanthropy, impact, those that have grown great businesses, the majority of people that we would see as successful in the financial world have some type of real estate. Why is it that people decide to buy a home and not just rent for the rest of their life? Because there's value there. It goes up in value, right? There's appreciation. There's also tax benefits. There's also the fact that you own this thing and you have an asset that you could do what you want with. When you get into rental properties and real estate, whether it's commercial or residential, you have another asset. But not only that, you have something that's going to earn you interest, that's going to earn you passive income all the while. And yes, there is a cost, but you have to look at the value. You have to look at the worth. Remember, we talked about that in the beginning. We talked about looking at it from a price tag situation or standpoint, a place of scarcity and not having enough, and a place of abundance. For people who get into the real estate world, they're looking at it from a place of abundance. They're looking at what is the worth of this property? What is the worth today? And how is it going to grow over the course of time? How is it going to help me to grow my portfolio? How is it that this cash flow, maybe from a rental property or commercial real estate or doing a flip, there's so many different avenues. How is it going to help me in my overall strategy to fill those three buckets? And you can fill it faster when there's more to fill it with. There's no doubt about that. I even saw back in the day when I started with my first rental property, how that was reshaping the way that I looked at it and how it was being the catalyst for these other buckets. Because what happens is then as the money is making money, what takes place is you're able to contribute more to your middle bucket and your long-term bucket of retirement, and those grow. And because those are growing and fueling themselves, you're feeling really great in terms of momentum, and you have more in the middle bucket to maybe then get the second property or the third property, so on and so forth. If it makes sense, because it has to have the value index aligned with what you're looking at for your life, what your purpose, what your mission is, what you're trying to do, that is goal oriented within those systems, but also that it's actually contributing. Because if it becomes a money pit or becomes a hindrance, we don't want to do that. We have to cut ties with it. So when you're looking at, you're building your game winning system, those three aspects, there's others that you can tap into. Again, one of those being real estate. Another one of those in the midterm that I truly believe in is the brokerage account. There are others as well, but I'm giving you the basic elemental ingredients. Think of it as cooking a recipe. Who often cooks really well? Grandmothers. They're amazing. Who often cooks really well? People that have experience. Well, who are we looking to when it comes to financial advice? Hopefully people that have had experience. Hopefully people who have done those things, or maybe even would have done something differently. One thing that I probably would have done differently is not buying a single family home right off the rip, but buying a duplex or a triplex and living in one part of it and renting out the others. I could probably go on and we'll talk about a whole nother podcast episode where I discuss the things I would have done differently. Meanwhile, we're learning all along. And one of the things that I have learned that is extremely important is mentorship, is having somebody that you can not only call, text, email, tap into, have great conversations with, someone who's going to guide you, someone you can trust, someone you can bounce ideas off of, and someone who's going to give you the straight shot right back at you if it's not something that's in your favor. Someone that's vulnerable enough to share with you the times that they made mistakes so that way you can actually have success. Mentorship, having somebody that is willing to be in your corner. It's basically like having a small mini board of directors when it comes to your finances for your life. And it has to be built on a foundation of trust. It has to be built on people that have had successes in these different avenues. My hope is that through this podcast episode, through understanding finances in a new way, from looking at it from a different lens or perspective, understanding where you're at with your relationship with money, you can develop an even better one over the course of time. You can shift from a scarcity mentality that I don't have enough or never will to an abundance mentality. And for some of those who might be overly abundant or overly confident, that the humility will settle in a little bit. You'll understand that the life that you truly do want to have can be the life that you will give to yourself, to your family, to your children, to those that you care about, because it is ultimately the life that you deserve. We get what we deserve. We get what we believe we deserve. So make sure that when you're approaching money and your finances this week, throughout the course of 2025, that you understand your value index, you recognize the triangle of success, these three buckets, and that you fill them and you operate out of a cash flow nature. I'm your host, Dan Jason. This is the EF3 Life Platform, the Life to the Fullest podcast. Make sure you check out my book, Winning with Money, Dollars and Cents. Check out our website, lots of great resources, and continue to do your best to work hard, to save, to invest, and recognize the fact that you can impact lives, including your own, and have a blessed and fortunate future. God bless you, and as always, keep living life to the fullest.